Hi everyone, I'm Aria from Susan's family. Today I'm bringing you a new piece, the Colorflow V-neck vest from Retro Nostalgia series. This vest comes in two sizes, large and small. The crochet methods are similar, just with different stitch counts and row counts. Both are made up of the back body, front body, collar and sleeve cuffs. First, crochet the back body. Then crochet the front body and bind it off together with the back body. So the side seams together as well. Next, crochet the collar along the neckline. Finally, crochet the sleeve cuffs at the armholes. Because every one's tension is different, the size of the fabric pieces will also vary. Before starting the main project, you need to crochet a gauge swatch. Measure your tension first. Here, we actually use 2 yarns. Work the 2 strands together as one strand. For convenience of watching, the video demonstrates with 1 cotton yarn. The 1 strand mentioned later actually corresponds to 2 strands. For specific gauge swatch charts and dimensions, please refer to the corresponding pattern chart. If there's a significant difference, you can change the needle size or adjust your tension. Now let's learn the method for crocheting the gauge swatch. Please watch the demonstration. Today I'll show you how to crochet a gauge swatch. Since everyone's tension is different, the size of the fabric piece will vary. To ensure the final dimensions are consistent, before starting the main project, use the corresponding yarn to crochet a gauge swatch with knitting needles. Measure the swatch size. In the corresponding product pattern chart, there will be a gauge swatch chart or corresponding dimensions. If the measurements differ significantly, you can change the needle size or adjust your tension. Let's take a look at the swatch chart. In the chart, one vertical line represents a knit stitch to make the chart less crowded. The blank squares in the chart also represent knit stitches. From the right side, it shows the texture of knit stitches. This is the stockinette stitch pattern. One thing to note: the swatch is worked back and forth. The chart reflects the texture on the right side of the piece. On the wrong side, you need to work the opposite stitch. Now watch me demonstrate the specific technique. To make it easier to see clearly, I'll demonstrate the method using a chunky yarn. If the project uses 2 strands of yarn, the method is the same. Simply combine the 2 strands as one strand when working. To make handling the gauge swatch yarn more convenient later, it's recommended to take yarn from the outside of the skein. First, cast on. Use the method of knitting while casting on knit stitches. Make a slip knot with the yarn. Pick up the straight needle with your left hand. Insert into the loop. Gently tighten. This is the first stitch. This stitch counts as a knit stitch. Hold the hook in your right hand like holding a pencil. Pick up another straight needle. Then take the yarn tail and wrap it once around your right pinky. Gently pinch the yarn with your ring finger and middle finger. Place the yarn between your index finger and middle finger. This is the proper posture for straight needles. If using circular needles, use the same method to place the loop onto one end of the needle. Then position it on the left side. Pick up the other end of the needle with your right hand and wrap the yarn. I'll continue knitting downward with straight needles here. The circular needle method is the same. Next, insert the right needle downward into the loop on the left needle. Use your right index finger to guide the yarn. Yarn over. Pick up and place it onto the left needle. Don't pull the yarn too tight, otherwise it'll be hard to pick up stitches later. This is the second stitch. Continue casting on. Insert the right needle downward, between these two loops. Yarn over. Pick up and place it onto the left needle. This is the third stitch. Don't pull the yarn too tight. It's okay to be slightly loose. Continue casting on. Insert the right needle between these two stitches. Downward. Yarn over. Pick up and place it onto the left needle. This is the fourth stitch. Remember the insertion position each time. Knit into the space between two loops. Refer to the chart for the exact number of stitches. My swatch has a random stitch count. I'll cast on a few more stitches. After reaching the required number of stitches, look, this is the completed cast-on effect. This demonstration only shows the technique with fewer stitches. Now begin working row 1. This row's chart is read from right to left. All symbols in the chart are vertical lines, indicating knit stitches throughout. Insert the right needle from top to bottom into the first loop on the left needle. Note that you insert into the loop itself, not between two loops. Yarn over. Draw through, while releasing the loop from the left needle. This is the first stitch. Next, knit the second stitch. Insert the right needle from top to bottom into the loop on the left needle. Yarn over. Draw through. Release the loop from the left needle. The second knit stitch is complete. Continue to the third stitch. Insert from top to bottom into the loop. Yarn over. Draw through. Release the loop. The third stitch is complete. The third stitch is complete. Knit each stitch one by one across the row. Finish all loops on the left needle, indicating the end of the row, if the last stitch loop is too loose. Gently tighten the yarn tail. Use the starting tail to distinguish the right side from the wrong side. The side where the starting tail is on the left-hand side is the right side of the piece. Otherwise it's the wrong side of the piece. Proceed to work row 2. This row is worked on the wrong side. Turn the piece over. Place it in the left hand. This row's chart is read from left to right. It also shows knit stitch symbols. Since it's worked on the wrong side, you need to work the opposite stitch. Work all purl stitches. Place the right needle below the yarn. From bottom to upwards. Insert into the first loop on the left needle. Yarn over. Draw through. Release the loop on the left needle. The first purl stitch is now complete. Continue from bottom to upwards. Insert into the first loop on the left needle. Yarn over. Draw through. Release the loop. The second purl stitch is now complete. Repeat this process. Finish the remaining stitches. Complete the last stitch. The second row is now complete. Continue working row 3. Work this row on the right side. Turn the fabric piece over. Knit all stitches. Complete this row. Besides following the pattern chart, you can also refer to the texture for guidance. The strand underneath forms a braid shape. This is the knit stitch texture. When encountering knit stitch texture, work knit stitch. Finish the last stitch. Row 3 is completed. Now work row 4. Turn the fabric piece over. Work the opposite stitch technique according to the chart. Purl all stitches. You can also refer to the texture for guidance. There's a horizontal bar underneath the loop. When this bar lies above the current loop, this is the purl stitch texture. When you encounter the purl stitch texture, work purl stitches. Finish the last stitch. Row 4 is completed. Here's a method to count rows. Count from the right side of the fabric piece. You can see the right side of the fabric piece shows vertical columns of braids. Count how many braids are in one column. Note that the cast-on row doesn't count as a row, meaning the bottommost braid isn't included. Start counting from the braid above. One, 2, 3. There are 3 braids in total. The loops on the needle count as one row, adding the loops on the needle. Here we've worked 4 rows in total. This is the method to count rows. The following technique is the same. Work all knit stitches on the right side. Purl on the wrong side. Continue until reaching the row numbers on the chart. Complete this part by yourself. After reaching the corresponding row numbers, lay the fabric piece flat. Take a ruler or gauge tool. Measure the fabric piece. I'll demonstrate the measuring method with a swatch. Be mindful not to stretch the fabric while measuring. Lay it flat. Measure horizontally first. Remember to skip the first and last 5 stitches when measuring from the 6th column of chains. Measure all the way to the other side, the 6th column of chains inward from the edge. Then measure vertically. From underneath the straight needle, the 6th row of chains from the bottom. Down to the bottom. The 6th row of chains from the bottom. This is the method of measuring with a ruler. The measured area is approximately 10 times 10 centimeters. If using a gauge ruler to measure, place it centered on the fabric piece. Then count the number of chains horizontally, which corresponds to the stitch count. Count the number of chains vertically, which corresponds to the row count. If there's a significant difference from the data or dimensions marked on the chart, to achieve the desired sample size, you can change the needle size while knitting, or adjust your tension. After measuring, remove the needles, unravel the fabric piece, and wind the yarn tails back onto the skein. For yarns that are difficult to unravel, you can pick up new yarn to continue knitting. Everyone complete it on your own. This is the method for knitting a gauge sample. Start with the back piece. Divide it into the hem and the body. First learn the hem below. Use the alternate knit and purl stitches casting on method. Work back and forth to create a 2x2 ribbing pattern. First, let's take a look at the chart. This chart is for teaching purposes only. Please follow your actual project as reference. The chart looks like this grid format. One square represents one stitch, corresponding to one loop in knitting. Corresponding to blank squares indicate no stitch. A horizontal line represents a purl stitch. Blank areas have no stitches, meaning no need to knit. Positions with ellipsis symbols indicate omitted sections. When counting the number of stitches per row, just count the number of squares, then match the number of loops on the knitting needle. Arrows indicate the knitting direction. The right side is always read from right to left, while the wrong side is read from left to right. Pay attention when working on the wrong side. You need to work the opposite stitch pattern as shown in the chart. Now watch me demonstrate the specific knitting method. For convenience of watching, here I'm using cotton yarn for demonstration, with random colors. For specific yarn, color schemes and hook sizes, please refer to the detail page of our product and paper instructions. Here the actual stitch count is higher. You can use circular needles of corresponding size to cast on. Next, I'll provide a method for starting with alternating knit and purl stitches, followed by working 2x2 ribbing. You may first watch the video. To learn the technique, then follow the pattern. First, cast on with alternating 1 purl stitch, 1 knit stitch. Make a slip knot with the yarn. Leave the yarn tail a bit longer, for convenient weaving in the ends later. Pick up the circular needle of corresponding size with your left hand. Circular needles are double-pointed knitting needles like this. You can simply use one end of the needle for knitting. Insert into the loop. Gently tighten. This is the first stitch. This stitch is a purl stitch. Hold the other end of the needle with your right hand in a pencil grip. Take the end of the yarn around your little finger. Gently pinch the yarn with your ring finger and middle finger. Place this yarn between your index finger and middle finger. This is the proper posture for knitting. Next, place the right needle above the yarn. Insert downwards into the loop on the left needle. Bring the yarn with your right index finger. Yarn over. Pick up the yarn. Place it onto the left needle. Don't pull the yarn too tight, otherwise it will be hard to pick up stitches later. This is the second stitch. This stitch is a knit stitch. You can see the yarn is below. Begin purl stitch cast on. Place the right needle underneath the yarn. Thread through the middle of these 2 loops from bottom to top. Note this is the middle position of the loops. Don't thread through the loops. Yarn over. Pick up the yarn. Place it onto the left needle. This is the third stitch. This stitch is a purl stitch. You can see the yarn is above. Next, begin knit stitch cast on. Place the right needle above the yarn. Insert the hook. Yarn over. Draw through. This is the fourth stitch. Cast on 1 more purl stitch. Place the right needle below the yarn. Insert the hook. Yarn over. Draw through. This is the fifth stitch. Cast on by alternating 1 purl stitch and 1 knit stitch, 1 knit stitch, alternating downward. When the yarn is above, cast on a knit stitch. When the yarn is below, cast on a purl stitch. Knit downward to the required number of stitches. After casting on the required number of stitches, the cast on is complete. My swatch has fewer stitches here, when the actual cast on has more stitches. Please check the stitch count. Next, work row 1. The pattern chart shows a knit stitch symbol for the first stitch, corresponding to knitting a knit stitch, with the yarn underneath the needle. Insert the right needle from top to bottom. Insert into the first loop on the left needle. Note that it's inserting into the loop, not between the loops. Then bring the yarn with the right hand. Yarn over. Draw through. Release the loop from the left needle. That's how 1 knit stitch is completed. The texture below forms a braid-like texture. This is the texture of the knit stitch. Continue downward. The second stitch is still a knit symbol, corresponding to one knit stitch. At this point the loop is at the back, which is a purl loop. While there's yarn lying across the top of the current loop. The next stitch loop is at the front. This is a knit loop, so we need to swap positions with the next stitch. Pinch the bottom of the two loops on the left needle with the right hand. Then release these two loops from the left needle. First insert the purl loop from the back onto the left needle. Now the two loops have swapped positions. Here the knit loop is at the front. After completing, knit one stitch. Insert, yarn over and draw through. Release the loop. Complete the knit stitch. The next two stitches are purl symbols, correspond to knit 2 purl stitches. Here perfectly 2 consecutive purl stitch loops. Simply crochet as is. Wrap the yarn over the needle. Insert the right needle upwards into the loop on the left needle. Yarn over. Draw through. Release the loop from the left needle. Complete 1 purl stitch. A yarn lying horizontally above the loop creates this texture, which is the purl texture. Continue. Keep the yarn over the needle. Insert into the loop. Yarn over and draw through. Release the loop. Another purl stitch completed. Next 2 stitches are knit symbols. First knit 1 regular knit stitch. Pay attention when switching from purl to knit. Drop the yarn down, corresponding to the pattern. After completing, swap the positions of the next 2 loops. The knit stitch loop is in front. Here you can use a straight needle to assist with the swap. First move the 2 loops onto the right needle, then with the left needle, pick up the first loop from behind. Release the loop. The right needle picks up the second loop. Move it back to the left needle. The loops are swapped. Then knit 1 stitch, followed by purling 2 stitches. Continue with 2 knit stitches afterward, alternating with 2 purl stitches. During the crocheting process, pay attention to swapping the positions of knit and purl loops. Ensure you knit the knit stitch loops. And purl the purl stitch loops. Repeat this process. Finish the remaining stitches. After completing the last stitch, gently tighten the starting tail. The first row is now done. This row is the right side of the fabric. The starting tail is on the left side. Proceed to work row 2. We will work this row on the wrong side. You need to crochet the opposite stitch pattern as shown in the chart. First turn the work. The chart shows 2 knit stitches at the beginning. For the opposite stitch, work purl stitches. So work 2 purl stitches. The next 2 stitches are purl symbols. For the opposite stitch, work knit stitches. Correspondingly work knit stitches. Moving forward, besides following the pattern, you can also refer to the texture for crocheting. When encountering purl texture, correspondingly work purl stitches. When encountering knit texture, correspondingly work knit stitches. This row, still alternate working 2 purl stitches and 2 knit stitches. Finish this row. Finish the last stitch. Row 2 is completed. The remaining rows will be worked in this 2x2 ribbing. Every row alternates 2 knit stitches and 2 purl stitches. The order of knit and purl stitches refers to the chart or texture. Note that odd-numbered rows are worked on the right side. Simply work the stitch pattern corresponding to the chart. Even-numbered rows are worked on the wrong side. You need to work the opposite stitch pattern as shown in the chart. This is the method for 2x2 ribbing. Here I'll use a swatch to explain how to count rows. You can see that knit stitches form these braid-like textures in columns. The bottom braid is formed by the cast-on. Start counting from the second braid. The loop on the last stitch also counts as 1 row. This swatch has a total of 6 rows worked. This is how to count rows. Refer to the pattern. Complete the required number of rows. After finishing, leave a yarn tail of about 10 centimeters and cut the yarn. That concludes the explanation for the hem. The hem is completed. Now work the body downward. Work back and forth. The new stitch technique used is right side increase. Please watch the demonstration. First take the corresponding yarn. Here we actually use 2 types of yarn. Work with the 2 strands as 1 strand. For convenience of watching, the sample continues to demonstrate with 1 strand of cotton yarn. The 1 strand, mentioned later, actually corresponds to 2 strands. First join the yarn. Tie a knot on the remaining strands. Then pull this knot to the base. This way the yarn is joined. When you need to join yarn later, you can repeat this process. During knitting you may encounter the situation where one of the 2 yarn balls runs out first. When you need to join yarn, follow the same method. Just join the yarn on the strand that ran out. Pay attention to place all yarn tails on the wrong side of the fabric piece. The yarn tails can be left unsecured for now. Then work row 1 with the new yarn. Read the chart from right to left. Place the right needle above the yarn. Knit 1 stitch. Then single crochet increase. Pick up the strand on the left side, below the V-shaped loop on the right. Knit 1 stitch. This is the increased stitch. Then insert the hook into the loop of this stitch and knit another stitch. This completes the right side increase. Notice that 2 loops are created within one chain. Continue knitting in knit stitch. Finish this row. Row 1 is now complete. Proceed to work row 2. Turn the work. Follow the pattern with opposite stitch techniques. Knit all stitches in purl here. Row 2 is now finished. These yarn tails can be woven in after the entire garment is completed. Weave in all the yarn tails uniformly. Gently tighten the yarn tails slightly. Then use a yarn needle to follow the texture on the wrong side. Pick up surface segments to weave in the ends. Pay attention to not letting the yarn tails show on the front side. After weaving in one section, trim off the excess yarn tails. This is the method for weaving in ends. For the remaining rows, work even in stocking stitch pattern, which means knitting in knit stitch on the right side, purl on the wrong side. Work back and forth. Continue knitting until reaching the row count before shoulder short rows. When counting rows, start counting from the first subtexture after switching colors. Refer to the chart to complete this section on your own. After finishing, on the next row, start short rows from the left side. Let me briefly explain the knitting sequence. Short rows on the left side, then start short rows from the right side. Work short rows back and forth on both ends, the row before binding off for the neckline. Now divide into left and right shoulders for knitting. The left and right here refer to when wearing the garment. Continue with the previous yarn to knit the right shoulder first. Decrease stitches on the neckline side. Continue short rows on the edge to form the sloping shoulder. Finally fasten off. Then join yarn on the right side of the neck opening. Bind off at the neckline. Then work back and forth to knit the left shoulder. Decrease stitches on the neckline side as well. Continue short rows on the edge. Finally fasten off in the same way. For specific short row technique. Neckline decreasing and shoulder fastening methods. Please refer to the video demonstration below. You can learn the technique first, then follow the pattern chart for knitting. Short rows with stitches held on the left side. As you can see, here we need 6 short rows. Row 1 is worked on the right side. Leave 5 stitches unworked at the end. I've already finished knitting. Row 2 is worked on the wrong side. First make a wrap on the right needle like this. Don't make the wrap too loose. Then work 1 slip stitch. Next, work purl stitches corresponding to each stitch. Finish this row. Once completed, continue to row 3. At the end of this row except for the first 5 stitches. Leave another 4 stitches unworked. Note: this wrap is not counted. Once completed, continue to row 4. Work in the same way as row 2. First make a wrap like this. Then work a slip stitch. Then follow the chart to finish this row normally. For the following row 5, leave another 4 stitches unworked at the end. Similarly, the wrap is not counted. Row 6 is worked in the same way as row 2. I'll continue to finish these 2 rows. Now, I've completed the short rows. Now I need to knit one more row, to eliminate the row difference, commonly called row elimination. First knit 1 by 1 accordingly. Knit all the way to the stitch before the wrap. Once done, work the wrap together with the left side stitch as one knit stitch. Each time you reach the wrap position afterward. Always work the wrap together with the left side stitch as one knit stitch. Continue knitting this row. Now, the row elimination is finished. Take a look. This is the right side effect. This is the wrong side effect. Sometimes to make both sides have identical row counts, you need to knit one more row. Just follow the pattern chart accordingly. Short rows with stitches left on the right side. As you can see, here we need to do 6 short rows. The first row is worked on the wrong side. Leave 5 stitches unworked at the end. I've already finished it. The second row is worked on the right side. First make a yarn over on the right needle like this. Then work 1 slip stitch. Next, knit 1 by 1 accordingly. Finish this row. Once completed, continue to row 3. At the end of this row except for the first 5 stitches, leave another 4 stitches unworked. Note: this yarn over is not included. Once completed, continue to row 4. Work in the same way as row 2. First, make a yarn over like this. Then work a slip stitch. Then follow the chart to finish this row normally. For the next row 5, leave another 4 stitches at the end. Same as before, the yarn over is not counted. Row 6 is worked in the same way as row 2. I'll continue to finish these 2 rows. Now, I've completed the short rows. Now I need to knit one more row to eliminate the row difference, commonly called row elimination. First work purl stitches evenly. Continue until the stitch before the yarn over. Once done, swap the position of the yarn over and the left side stitch first. Then knit them together as one purl stitch. Each time you reach the yarn over position afterward, always swap the yarn over and the left side stitch first. Then knit them together as one purl stitch. Continue knitting this row to the end. Now, the row elimination is complete. Take a look. This is the right side effect. This is the wrong side effect. Let's learn a common neckline decrease technique, which is decreasing by knitting knit stitches to create the desired curve. Assuming this is the front body neckline. Therefore, this side is the left shoulder. This side is the right shoulder. Sometimes, the shoulders need short rows. There are no short rows here, only explaining neckline decreases. We'll knit the left shoulder first. This pattern has fewer stitches, mainly explaining the technique. First knit row 1 of the neckline, which means knitting 13 knit stitches first. If there are more stitches, you can use stitch markers to separate these stitches before knitting. I've already completed row 1, leaving the remaining loops unworked. Then knit row 2. Row 2 is worked on the wrong side. You'll notice, we need to bind off 3 stitches consecutively at the beginning of this row. If there are many stitches to bind off consecutively, we can first separate them with stitch markers. Begin binding off. First knit 1 slip stitch. Then purl 1 stitch. Next pass the previous stitch over the following stitch. This way we've bound off 1 stitch. Continue purling 1 stitch. Then bind off another stitch. Unless otherwise specified, on the wrong side we purl while binding off. There's 1 stitch left to the right of the stitch marker, which is the loop of the 3rd stitch. We need to bind off this stitch. Therefore, knit 1 more stitch and bind it off. the very next stitch, which is the stitch adjacent to the last bind off symbol. Here we simply purl this stitch. Note, since stitch techniques may vary across different patterns, refer to the chart for this stitch. After finishing, bind off the third stitch. This way, the 3 stitches on the chart are bound off. Continue following the chart. Note, next you should start knitting from the second stitch next to the bind off symbol. Begin knitting from the second stitch. Before knitting, gently tighten this loop to prevent noticeable holes. There are no special patterns here. We purl all stitches. Now, the second row is complete. Continue to work row 3, refer to the pattern. Knit all stitches. I've finished knitting. Continue to work row 4. Here at the beginning only bind off 2 stitches, in the same way as row 1. First work 1 slip stitch. Then work 1 purl stitch. Bind off 1 stitch. Continue to work 1 purl stitch. Bind off 1 stitch. Gently tighten the loops. Then work all purl stitches, and complete row 5 as well. Now, I finished row 5. Continue to work row 6. At the beginning of this row only bind off 1 stitch, in the same way as binding off the first stitch in row 1. Complete. Work all purl stitches. The remaining rows 7 and 9 are all knit stitches. Row 8 is identical to row 6. Bind off 1 stitch at the beginning. Row 10 doesn't require binding off. Work purl stitches normally. Now, I've completed these 10 rows. There should be 6 stitches remaining. Here it's marked as hold, which means we need to temporarily secure these loops. We can use waste yarn to temporarily secure them. If there are no special requirements for the yarn tails, leave about 15 centimeters and trim off. Pay attention to prevent the loops from slipping. The left shoulder is done. Now work on the right shoulder. Before crocheting, we need to decrease 9 stitches in the middle first. We can separate them with stitch markers. Pick up the new yarn. Make a slip knot with the yarn. Slightly tighten the loop. Knit 2 knit stitches first. Then decrease 1 stitch. Knit 1 more knit stitch. Decrease 1 stitch. When there's no special instruction, on the right side, bind off while knitting the both sides together. Continue decreasing the remaining stitches. Pay attention as well when decreasing the last loop. The stitch you're knitting is the first stitch to the left of this bind off symbol. Refer to the pattern to knit the corresponding stitch technique. Here we continue knitting knit stitches and bind off. Once completed, start from the second stitch and finish this row. Then, on the wrong side, purl the entire second row. Now I've finished the second row. Continue to work row 3. Decrease 3 stitches consecutively at the beginning. First knit 1 slip stitch and 1 knit stitch. Decrease 1 stitch. Continue decreasing while knitting knit stitches. Now, 3 stitches have been decreased. Continue to finish row 3 and complete row 4. Now I've finished row 4. Decrease 2 stitches at the beginning of the 5th row. Use the same decreasing method as the first 2 stitches of row 3. For the subsequent rows 7 and 9, decrease 1 stitch at the beginning. Use the same decreasing method as the first stitch of row 3. I'll continue to finish the remaining part of the right shoulder. Now I've finished the right shoulder. There should be 6 stitches remaining here, and temporarily secure these 6 stitches. So, this neckline decreasing method is now complete. Up to this point, the back body knitting is finished. Next, let's learn the front body. It's also divided into two sections, the hem and the body. No new stitch techniques are used. The hem and body are knitted in the same way as the back body. The hem is started using the alternate knit and purl stitches method, back and forth to create the 2x2 ribbing pattern. After completing, switch colors to knit the body. On the first row of the body, make one right increase stitch. All others are knitted in stocking stitch pattern. Refer to the chart. Continue knitting until the row before the neckline position. The row before the neckline is now done. Next, divide into left and right shoulders for knitting. Continue knitting the left shoulder back and forth with the previous yarn. Decrease stitches on the neckline side. Work even on the edges first. Finish with short rows to create the sloping shoulder. Finally bind off by matching with the corresponding position on the back body. Then slip one stitch without knitting on the left side of the neck opening. You can use a stitch marker to slip and mark this center stitch for later use. If no stitch marker is available, you can substitute with a safety pin or paper clip from home. Attach yarn on the stitch 1 position to the left of the marked center position. Refer to the method for joining the yarn on the left shoulder of the back body. Then follow the chart to work the corresponding stitch pattern. Then work back and forth on the right shoulder. Similarly, decrease stitches on the neckline side. Work even on the edges first. Then work short rows. Finally bind off by matching with the shoulder of the back body. Specific short row technique. Neckline decrease method is similar to the corresponding position on the back body. For specific bind off method, please refer to the demonstration video below. The first method is stitch-to-stitch joining. This method is commonly used when both pieces are in loop state. It's a common joining technique, where you connect the fabric pieces by binding off together. Typically used for joining the shoulders of front and back bodies. Both pieces are in loop state. We consider the stockinette side as the right side. The bind off is usually done on the wrong side of the piece, meaning you need to place the two pieces with right sides together. Usually, one of the pieces remains uncut. This yarn can be on either piece. Place the side with yarn tail on the right. When binding off together, it's typically done by knitting and binding off simultaneously, meaning you work through both loops of the two pieces at the same time. Knit stitch while binding off and slip stitch. The stitch counts of both pieces are usually identical. Work evenly corresponding stitches while binding off. If one piece has more stitches, you'll need to decrease and bind off on the side with more stitches. Assuming this piece has more stitches, you can insert into two loops at once. Then continue inserting into one loop afterward. Knit stitch while binding off. If the back piece has more stitches, insert into the back two loops simultaneously. Knit stitch while binding off. In my case, both pieces have identical stitch counts. Continue binding them off completely. Tie a knot and hide the yarn tail. This is the effect after joining and binding off. Once the shoulders are joined and bound off, sew together the side seams of the front and back bodies. Note that the hems don't need to be sewn. Follow the row-to-row joining method. You can mark the joining area first with stitch markers. Refer to the chart for specific joining positions, or try it on for fit. Sew the joining area according to the actual situation. Refer to the color chart for yarn color. Then evenly mark several points on the sides. Then proceed with sewing. Here we provide a row-to-row joining method. You can learn it first, then sew. Now, let's show. Next, learn row-to-row joining. We usually use the seamless sewing method. When sewing, pick up the horizontal strands along the edges. Let's first get familiar with the fabric piece. First, find the first stitch on the edge. The first stitch on the edge usually has 4 situations. The first is slip stitch, which means picking up the stitch without knitting along the texture, forming a large braid. The second is also slip stitch, only when slip stitching. It's opposite to the texture underneath, forming a knot like this. The third is knitting every row. Usually knit on the right side, purl on the wrong side, forming small braids like this. The fourth is also knitting every row. Usually knit on both right side and wrong side, forming garter stitch. The second stitch is on the left side of the first stitch. For example, this fabric piece. From this side, the second stitch shows knit texture. From the other side, the second stitch shows purl texture. Whether the second stitch is knit texture or purl texture, you can notice the loops are always facing forward. These backward loops, horizontal bars underneath, are the horizontal strands between 2 stitches. Same on this side. This is the backward loop. This one is the horizontal strand between 2 stitches. Same with seed stitch on edges. This is the second stitch. This column is the second stitch. Forward loop. Between these two stitches. Backward loop. This strand of yarn is the horizontal strand between two stitches. Edges are slip stitches, same 4. Between these two stitches, there are horizontal strands as well. No matter which type, one strand roughly corresponds to one row. Before sewing, you can first weave in the yarn tails on the wrong side for a few stitches, and tie a knot to secure them. I won't weave them in here. Seamless sewing alternates between these two pieces. Picking up the horizontal strands along the edges. To sew them together. Pick up 1-2 strands each time. Note, if the row counts match between the two pieces, you can sew them together correspondingly, meaning you pick the same number of strands each time. Always inserting the hook where you last pulled out. To pick up the horizontal strands. Here, I pick up 1 strand each time. After sewing a few stitches, gently tighten it slightly. If the row counts differ between the two pieces, but you want to sew them together evenly, you can work on the side with more rows. Pick up extra strands as needed. For example, generally pick 1 strand each time. On the side with more rows, at appropriate positions, pick 2 strands. Here the row counts match between the two pieces. I'll continue sewing until finished. This is the seamless sewing for rows method. Up to this point the front body knitting is complete. Next, let's learn about the collar. First, pick up stitches along the neckline of the front and back bodies. Then work in rounds with 2x2 ribbing. Finally, bind off. A new stitch technique will be used. Knit 3 together, K3 tog. Here's a method for picking up stitches along the neckline. The stitch count here is for reference only. You can learn the technique first. Then refer to the pattern for picking up stitches. Please note that the number of stitches picked up for the back neckline must be a multiple of 4 plus 2. Watch the demonstration. First, pick up and knit the first round. I'll demonstrate using this swatch. Before picking up stitches, check the neckline size first. If the size is too large to work in the round with straight needles, you can use circular needles for picking up and knitting. Here I'm demonstrating with 3 straight needles. Start picking up stitches from the back body. You'll notice that the back body is usually divided into 3 sections, 2 sides and the middle part. Before picking up, you can first allocate the total number of stitches according to the pattern requirements. Across these 3 sections, typically, the middle section is picked up evenly stitch by stitch. The remaining stitches are then evenly distributed to both sides. For example, if I need to pick up a total of 23 stitches on this back body, I'll pick up 11 stitches evenly in the middle section. These 11 stitches usually correspond to the number of stitches bound off for the center V-neck. Then I'll evenly pick up 6 stitches on each side. Pick up all stitches and knit for this round. For this type of side edge, pick up a few strands along the edge. Pay attention to keep it roughly even. After completing the picking up, there should be no large gaps. Here I'm using different, colored yarns for demonstration. This makes it convenient for watching. After picking up the sides, pick up 11 stitches evenly in the middle. Once done, continue to pick up 6 stitches evenly along this side edge. Once completed, we reach the front body position. The front body is divided into 3 sections here. They are the center with 1 stitch, and the side edges on both sides. First, pick up the required number of stitches evenly on this side edge. You can first divide this side edge evenly with stitch markers, then pick up stitches evenly at the marked positions. Then we arrive at the center stitch. Pick up the loop and knit 1 stitch. You can place a stitch marker on this stitch to mark the position of the center stitch. Then pick up the required number of stitches on the remaining side edge. After all stitches are picked up, check the stitch count. Then distribute them evenly onto 3 straight needles. This completes the picking up for the first round. Next, knit the second round. Starting from this round, work the 2x2 ribbing pattern. Tighten the yarn where the needles join at the beginning and end. Pay attention each time you switch needles. Tighten the yarn after knitting the first stitch to prevent noticeable needle change marks. Continue knitting down until 1 stitch before the center position. Now there's 1 stitch remaining. You've now reached the corresponding position. Next, knit 1 center stitch, and decrease 3 stitches into 1. Insert the right needle from left to right, to slip the first 2 loops on the left needle. Then knit 1 stitch. Then pick up and slip the 2 unworked loops. Cover the left stitch and slip it. This completes the center stitch decrease of 3 stitches into 1. Continue to place a stitch marker on this stitch. Now check the stitch pattern of the stitch before this one. Knit the next stitch in the identical pattern, which is also a center stitch decrease of 3 stitches into 1. Both sides have identical stitch patterns. Follow the pattern chart for specific stitch techniques. Continue to finish this round. Here we begin knitting 2 knit stitches. The last 2 stitches are perfectly purl stitches. This completes round 2. Starting from round 3, every subsequent round can be worked in 2x2 ribbing according to the texture below. That is, knit when you see a chain below. Purl when you see a horizontal bar below. Repeat this process. Continue until there is one stitch remaining before the center stitch. Now you've reached the corresponding position. Then work a central decrease of 3 stitches into one knit stitch. Insert the right needle from left to right to slip the first 2 loops on the left needle. Then knit 1 stitch. After that, pick up the 2 slipped loops that were not worked. Cover the left stitch and slip it off. This completes the central decrease of 3 stitches into one knit stitch. Don't forget to place a stitch marker to mark it. Check the stitch technique of the previous stitch, or continue working according to the texture below. Keep knitting down until this round is finished. This completes round 3. The remaining rounds of the collar are worked in the same way. All are centered at the center position. Work a central decrease of 3 stitches into one knit stitch. Work 2x2 ribbing pattern in other positions. Follow the previous demonstration. Knit the required number of rounds. Finish off after completion. Below we provide a finishing method. Everyone can refer to the video first. Learning method, then follow the pattern to finish off. You can also finish off according to personal preference. Please watch the demonstration. After completing the last round, work a single rib bind off. The method is to alternate working the opposite stitch of knit and purl, and finish off. Since it's worked on 2x2 ribbing, you need to switch the position of the loops while knitting. Form an alternating knit and purl pattern before finishing off. First knit 2 stitches opposite to the texture below. Here it's a knit stitch texture, so knit 2 purl stitches. Then lift the previous stitch over the next stitch. Note, don't make the bind off too tight. This finishes off one stitch. Next, the left side shows a purl stitch texture. Knit 1 stitch opposite to the texture below, which means knit 1 knit stitch. Before knitting, pinch the bottom of the right side loop with your left hand. Take the needle out. Place it above the yarn and back through the loop. Then knit a knit stitch. Lift the previous stitch over the next stitch. This finishes off another stitch. Next, the left side still shows a purl stitch texture. First swap the position of the 2 loops on the left. Move these 2 loops onto the right needle. Then, with the left needle behind, pick up the first loop. Release the loop. Pick up the second loop with the right needle. Move it onto the left needle. Now the two loops have swapped positions. Here the knit stitch loop is in front. Knit one purl stitch here. Before knitting, take the needle out. Place it below the yarn and back through the loop. Finish with one purl stitch. Decrease one stitch. Next the left side is purl. Knit one more stitch. Place the yarn below and back through the loop. Knit the knit stitch. Then decrease one stitch again. The two stitches on the left are perfectly one knit stitch, one purl stitch, corresponding to the opposite stitch technique. That means each time you need to knit the opposite stitch technique of the left side texture, pay attention to always move the right needle. To change the position of the yarn tail. When purling, the yarn is above. When knitting, the yarn is below. Swap the positions of the two loops on the left downward. The knit stitch loop is in front. Move both loops onto the right needle. Then insert the left needle from behind to pick up the first loop. Pick up the second loop with the right needle. Move it onto the left needle. After swapping positions, continue knitting the opposite stitch technique and bind off. Repeat this process downward until finishing the entire round. After completing the last stitch, stretch the loop. Leave a 10 cm yarn tail, and cut the yarn. Then thread the yarn tail through the loop. Finally weave in the yarn tails. If there's a large gap on the left side, you can sew a few stitches. Weave in the ends following the texture. This completes the explanation of binding off. Up to this point, the collar knitting is completed. Finally, pick up stitches along both armholes to knit the cuffs. The method is similar to the collar. Just no need to decrease stitches. First, pick up stitches along the armholes. Refer to the chart for the exact number of stitches. If the sewing position has been adjusted, adjust the stitch count according to actual conditions. The stitch count should be a multiple of 4. Then work in the round with 2x2 ribbing. Finally, bind off. The binding off method is the same as the collar. Everyone follow the methods learned earlier. Refer to the chart to complete the sleeve cuff. Up to this point, the sleeve cuff is explained. At the same time, the entire vest is explained. If during the crochet process, there are still unclear parts, don't hesitate to join our Facebook group to get supports. Susan's family, supporting your handwork experience, sharing the joy of life. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode.